Okay, everyone, welcome to this afternoon's webinar. It's the Wednesday webinar on Monday, just to keep it interesting. This one is all about NotebookLM, but with a little bit of a different twist. If you were in Vera's webinar last week, I think, it was just all of the interesting things and the new upgrades and all of that sort of thing. And then from a administrative point of view, but this one is a little bit of an overview of NotebookLM, but with the idea of using it with students. And so if you work with students who are over 13 and your district has this ability enabled, then this is the workshop for you. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in, but Vera has put the link in the chat, and so that'll get you into the slide deck. And if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. I'll try to check over there and make sure that I'm seeing what's going on. And otherwise, we're just going to go ahead and get started. You guys ready?
Yes.
All right. So let me find my little button here to click on. There we go, go in the right direction. So on the second page of the presentation, just to have everything in sort of one-stop shopping, there's the link to the presentation, but then there's also this companion doc. And so open that up. It's just a Google Doc. It'll live in your Google Drive instead of this presentation, which is living in Canva right now. And it'll have all of the links and some of the background resources and everything that we're going to talk about during this session. So wanted to kind of give you a spot to find all of that. And then I also put the Padlet on this front screen too. So go ahead and open that link up too. So because we're going to jump over there in just a minute and do some introductions. I want to take a poll and that sort of thing. Okay. So let me go to the next screen here and just do a quick little rundown of what we're going to cover today. I want to start off with, after we do intros, a little bit of an overview of what NotebookLM is and that sort of thing. And then also just all the new features, because if you're a little bit familiar with it, you know that they have been changing and improving it right and left. And so you always have to keep up with that. But we're going to spend a good chunk of the time on how to design an AI-friendly notebook experience for students and look at what I unironically called traditional uses of NotebookLM. As if there's anything about using it that is traditional, but kind of a traditional teaching approach with it. And then some ways to do what I'm calling rigor upgrades, like how to really get kids to think their thoughts first before they just dive in automatically to any AI, but NotebookLM in particular. So that is the plan. So if you have not already opened up the Padlet, please do. And in that first column, there's a link on this page, but it's also in the companion doc. In the first column, just introduce yourself. If you're having trouble with the Padlet and you want to just drop introductions in the chat, that's fine too. But join the Padlet, introduce yourself, what you're currently teaching, and then in the second column of the Padlet, there's a quick poll that I'd like you to answer that kind of gets your comfort level with AI or with NotebookLM out there, so I can know who's in the room. So I'm going to jump over here to my Padlet screen. So we have a bunch of people and their little typing bubbles up here at the top. So I appreciate you guys doing that. So hey, you guys. Hi, Samantha. Excellent GIF there. Hi, Chef Pritchett, Foods 1 and 2. Super cool. I was just in a school where we toured the foods section over on their CTE hall, and it was amazing. Hi, Adrian. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, you guys. I'm really glad you're here. And got a few votes showing up so far, but I'm going to wait a second so everybody can take that poll. And the poll questions are just, really simple. How familiar are you with NotebookLM? Is it brand new to you, have you tried it, but you're here to learn more tips, or are you obsessed with it and it's like your go-to thing? So kind of where do you land on that scale? There we go. Okay, so I'm going to give about a couple more seconds for people to type in there and take that poll. We've got about 11 results, so I'm going to click on those just to see what we have. Excellent distribution, kind of my favorite heterogeneous class, right? So new people, about 27% have tried it. Half the people have tried it. Excellent. And then some people who are obsessed with it. So hopefully this will have something for everybody. So let me jump back over here to my little screen, and I'm going to go over here and ask you guys if you want to drop in the chat, or also go back into the Padlet and answer this one question. How do you currently use, if you're a NotebookLM user, especially the 45 to percent of you who have tried it, what did you use it for? What did you try? And then if you also want to just say in that first column after your introductions, how do you use AI in general? Like, what are some of your go-to uses of your favorite AI? Do you use all the AIs? Do you use them specifically for a certain purpose?
Are we putting it in a chat or can we speak?
Yeah, you can put it in the chat, but I would love it if you just spoke out loud. That would be awesome.
Okay, yeah. So I tried yesterday. Well, I just started trying. I was just using ChatGPT and Magic School, but I started using Gemini. Actually, I sometimes I'll put the same prompt in all three and just kind of see, which one I like. I mean, depending on what time of day you put things in, you might get something different. Or sometimes if you've already used a lot of, I guess, that particular bandwidth, it'll go to like a lower,
Yeah,
like
definitely. Especially chat will bump you to a different model if you
yes.
used up your quota at the higher level. Yeah.
But
So
and the models are just older. Is that right? Like an older model? Mm-hmm.
And in what I think the biggest difference is that the lower models use less compute or less tokens, and so it's not quite as a robust model as the highest level that you have access to. So I love that you said that you try the same thing in different places to see the different responses that you get. And one of the things that if you're a NotebookLM user, you know that it is trained on, it uses the sources that you upload to it. And so you'll definitely see a difference between how the responses you get with NotebookLM, even though it's powered by Gemini, versus a open model that can go out to its large language model without going directly to the sources that you've curated. So, I just wanted to start off with that quick little question about, kind of what do you use NotebookLM for if you are a notebook user, and then versus what do you use just your regular AIs for, and start to kind of think about, where the best use will be for NotebookLM. So just to kind of level set what NotebookLM is, it is a product that is created by Google. And it is now part of the Google Workspace tools. So you can find it, when we get to the part of finding it, you can find it in your waffle sitting right over there by Drive and Gmail and Docs and everything else. It is a product that is powered by Google's Gemini AI. So behind the scenes, Gemini is doing the work. And sort of the origin story behind it that I read in one of the Google blogs is that, the Google engineers on this project were looking around their digital spaces and noticing that people were they were reading, they're asking questions and researching and writing and note taking and, organizing things in all of these different platforms, right? All of these things were taking place digitally all over. And their sort of brainchild for NotebookLM was, what if we put all of those activities and tasks that people are doing in one spot, like a notebook, and then added a powerful AI behind the scenes. And so that's kind of the germ of the idea for NotebookLM. And because it has Gemini behind the scenes, it's a powerful AI, generative AI, and it does what AIs do best. It makes connections. But the biggest difference in using NotebookLM is that it goes to the sources that you've uploaded to the notebook first and makes the connections drawing on those sources rather than going out to the large language model and finding the information. So this ability to have choice and control over the data sources is its biggest distinguishing feature. So it can still do everything that a powerful AI can do: summarize, explain, brainstorm with you, create products. And the products that NotebookLM has given us access to create are increasing every day. So, but again, the biggest difference is that it's based on the sources that you select rather than external sources. And this idea of being able to upload your sources to your notebook is called source grounding. So, and it is the term for, talking about how you're requiring your AI to go to a knowledge base first. And this gives you the ability to create a personalized AI. It has the benefit of reducing the risk of inaccuracies or hallucinations, because as you'll see, when you prompt your notebook, it will go to your sources and it'll actually give you citations so you can see exactly where it got the information that it's returning to you. The only sort of limitation is that because it is not going out directly to its large language model and pulling things in to give you information, it might not be as creative as an external AI. And so the way to kind of get around that is to really be intentional about what you add to your notebook so that you can get the types and qualities of responses that you want to get. Okay, before we go any further, I just want to say a couple of things about data privacy. When you are using NotebookLM or any AI, you have to keep your data privacy rules and really keep those things in mind. And so and then especially if you're going to be using this with your secondary students, then also data privacy is important for you to understand, but it's also important for them to understand. So we'll talk about students towards the end of this when you think about rolling this out. But you can see here, green would be standards, curriculum maps, publicly available information, things that are, handbooks, lesson plan templates, that sort of thing. So those would be kind of in the, feel free to upload to Notebook, no problem. In the cautious area would be data sources or sources that you want to use, but you've made sure to sanitize and anonymize the student information before you put it up there. And then in the do not upload to your AI would be very sensitive documents like IEPs, your grade books, anything that contains personally identifiable information. So just kind of keep those guidelines in mind when you're thinking about what should I upload to a notebook, and then also start thinking about how are you going to frame this to your students as well so that they understand how to protect their own privacy when they're asking questions. So we talked about this a little bit too. Google's part of NotebookLM is part of the Google Workspace. And so their statement directly from their site is that your uploads, your queries, your chats, and the responses that the AI gives you will not be reviewed by human reviewers. Even if you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that information is not reviewed by humans. And also the information in the notebook is not used to train their AI model. So you're not, everything that you've added and the chats that you have with it are not also training Google's Gemini AI. And if you want a direct link over there to their privacy policy, I've got the link here. So I think that's also in the companion doc. Okay, so with all of that background, let's get started a little bit in actual NotebookLM. I'll demonstrate on the screen, but if you want to go ahead and open up this link right here, that'll take you over to NotebookLM. If you are on your Google screen and you see the waffle up here, you can also click that and you will notice someplace in this group of stuff that, and you might have to scroll down. Sometimes if you haven't used it recently, it's down here towards the bottom, but someplace you should notice NotebookLM. And super cool tip, you can press this little edit button right here, and you can just drag your tools around and place them where you want to. So if you don't
Excuse me.
use, yes, Jack,
Just
go
a
ahead.
question. Thank you. Just a question. Does this work for all browsers or only for Google Chrome?
And if you are on the Google, like, google.com, and regardless of whether you're see this and you
Sorry,
sign
sorry,
in,
my son.
you should be able to see it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. So I am going to go ahead and click that button and open up NotebookLM. And now you'll see when I open it up, it takes me directly to this page where I've got all of my notebooks, right? If this is the first time you're clicking on NotebookLM, you'll probably have a couple of screens before that where you have to say, you have to agree to things, and then there's a screen that says try NotebookLM, right? And once you get there, you'll be on this screen. So find this button up here in the upper right where it says create new, and open up one of your notebooks. Whenever you open a notebook for the first time, it will give you this upload. This is the box for uploading your sources. So we're going to talk about that in a second, but I'm going to go ahead and close this for right now so you can see the panels. And this is the format of your NotebookLM screen. You've got 3 panels, the sources panel over here, the chat panel in the center, and then the studio panel over here on the right-hand side. So let me jump back over here and show you what we've got. So the first thing we're going to talk about with the with your notebook is what you can do with sources, because that is your notebook is blank. It's like a blank slate until you actually upload something to it. So on the regular model, the standard model of NotebookLM, you can have 100 notebooks per user, and you can add 50 sources per notebook. There are some limits on the things that you can generate, but the limits reset themselves, except for deep research. The limits reset themselves every 24 hours. So you can ask your notebook 50 questions per day. You can generate 3 either audio or video generations per day, and then you have 10 per day of reports and quizzes and flashcards.
Hi.
So,
Hi, sorry, I just had a quick question.
sure.
Is there any way to pay for like a premium version that doesn't have any limits?
Yes, and there's a link in the companion doc that, and a little bit further on here, that'll take you over to Google's tiered systems. You can see the difference between Pro and Plus and Enterprise. So
okay. Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay, so when you're in your blank notebook, right, you've got these 3 panels. Here on the left-hand side, we've got the sources. In the center, you've got your chats. And then over on the right-hand side, you'll have the studio panel. And you can see that they're designed to do really different things. The sources panel is where you're going to upload all your sources, and it automatically starts generating some information for you as soon as you add something to your notebook. And then the center panel is where you're going to be doing all of your chatting back and forth, and you'll see what's happening there. And then the right-hand side, the studio panel, is where we have all of the preset tools and products that you can generate based on the sources that you've uploaded. So in the source panel, just a couple of things to note that I think are really interesting, besides for just all the types of files that you can upload, is this ability to add Google Docs and slides directly from your Google Drive. And the great thing about that is that if you change the doc or the slide file over, in your drive and you're working on it and it's changed, then it will automatically sync up here. There's a spot where you can see if you've got a Google Doc where you can click a link and it'll automatically sync and update your notebook based on the changes that have been made in a document. So let's go to the next thing. So what I'd like you guys to do, if you haven't already, is if you have a brand new notebook, is upload a source. But since this is a student-facing session, think about a source that you would be using to teach students. You would want to have be a student-facing piece of information. So you can upload anything you want to your notebook, but we'll try to design one that has this student-facing idea in mind. And I'm going to jump over here and demonstrate that for you as well. So if I'm in my studio panel, or if I'm in my blank notebook, you can click on this plus sign right here that says Add Sources. And it opens up this box where you have all of your choices. You can search directly from the web, and it will give you a list of things to choose from that you can add to your notebook based on how you've conducted your search. You also have access to research. Deep research is the one that you do have some limits on. You can click here to upload files directly from your hard drive. You can click here to put in links to YouTube videos and websites. The one thing that I've found with this is that if the website is protected in some way, it may give you a little error button when you upload it, and you'll notice that over in your source panel, because it may not be able to be embedded in a third-party AI. Same thing with YouTube videos. You may find some videos that you can't upload that don't add to the sources because they're protected from being added, and YouTube videos also have to be publicly available rather than private or viewable by a link. Okay, so let's go ahead and upload something. I am going to go to upload files, and how about if I pick a PDF? And you can see as soon as you upload a file, your notebook starts to change. It will, think about it for a minute while it gets itself up there. But once you get into a notebook, what you're going to notice is that on the left-hand side, your sources will be listed, and the notebook will generate a summary that is based on the contents of the notebook at that time. And so immediately, as soon as you start uploading your sources, your notebook starts to change, right? And if you look at one of your sources that you have uploaded, it'll give you an AI summary right away. But down below that summary, it lists the information in the source exactly as it was uploaded. It may take away some of the formatting, and it might not, your PDF might not look as pretty as it used to, but the information directly from the source is listed down below. And then you've got this AI summary that is up here. And if you scroll down a little bit in that AI summary, you'll see some little buttons. And so based on the contents, if you click on one of those, it treats that as a query, as a question that you've asked it. And so I clicked on the one that said discuss academic integrity. It's going to think about it for a second. It kind of gives you a play-by-play report on what it's doing while it's thinking, and then it generates an answer based on your prompt, and that shows up over here in the chat. And you'll also notice right here that there are little citations along the way that when you hover over them, it shows the contents of the source that it used to get that answer. So again, that's that source grounding where you know that the notebook is getting that information from the sources that you've uploaded, and you can go back and you can double check. And so if I click on that little citation, it opens up the source that it was looking at, and then it highlights in purple the exact location where it is crediting that information from. So notice the AI summary, notice how it gives you some suggested prompts as soon as you start uploading things. Another thing just really quick to note over here, once you've uploaded your source, if you don't like what it's called, if you want to organize them a little bit, you can click on the 3 dots over here on the left and you can rename it. If it isn't something that you wanted to upload or it didn't work out right because it was maybe publicly available video, then you can just remove that so that you clear up space in your notebook to add something else. Okay, the next panel, just to touch on really quickly, is the chat panel, right? So that's in the center. And so all of your prompts will appear in there. You've got a prompt box down here. So just like any AI, you're going to ask your questions and do your prompting in this box. And as soon as you start asking it questions, you're going to notice that that information lands over here, right? And you have some choices. You can copy it and paste it over into a Google Doc or a Word or someplace else to work with it and do some formatting. But you can, or if you just want to keep that response because it was really good, you can click Save to Note. And when you click Save to Note, that's going to pop that exact response over here on the right-hand side in your studio panel where you have some more choices. One of the things that I really love about this is you have the 3 dots here. Every time you see some dots, just click on them, where you can convert your note to a source. Right? So if it was a great response and you want to emphasize that point of view or that answer in your notebook, then you can add it as a source, and that means it'll pop up over here on the source panel. You can do it to everything, or you can export it to Docs and to Google Sheets. And I've done this a couple of times with the export to Docs feature, and at DPI we have where the notes go. So if you export a note to Docs and you have your headings set in a Google Docs, suppose you want your title heading to always be a certain font size, and then heading 1 to be, branded colors for your PSU or your district or your school. I've noticed that when I exported a note to my Google Docs, it took on the formatting presets that I had in my Google Drive. So that was a pretty handy thing to have. It'll take something that looks like this, which is informative, right? But maybe not as pretty as you would like it to be, and do some of the formatting work for you once you export it over to Docs. Okay, so let's go to just a really quick try this. Prompt your notebook if you've uploaded something with one of the preset prompts that are down there at the bottom. You can just use that and just see how you can generate a note. Click Save to Note, maybe try exporting it, and notice the numbered citations in its response and kind of check out how that works to give you an idea of how the source grounding works. Just do a little bit of experimenting there for just a sec. Does anybody have any questions about that before we move on to the next thing? Don't want to get too far behind here. Okay, so we talked about the studio panel just a little bit, but before we move on past that, I'm gonna unclick this so you can see in your notebook. The other thing about NotebookLM is to just keep track of this studio panel. They're adding things in here constantly. It started off with the podcast ability and has just exploded from there. So in addition to creating these audio overviews, based on your sources, you can now create a video, you can do mind mapping. There are preset reports, or there's a reports feature that is kind of dynamic and related to the contents of your notebook. So your report features may change depending on what sources you have uploaded to your notebook. You can create, a user in the notebook can create flashcards. At this time, the export feature for flashcards is just to a Google Sheet with the information. So the flashcards are really designed to be used inside of the notebook. And same thing with quizzes. That has a fantastic infographic ability that is fun to play around with. You can create slide decks and you can use the data table feature. So a lot of really cool preset tools over here on the right-hand side. So here's a quick list of all of those. And another thing about this applies to the audio overview, but it also applies to any of the other products that you generate in a notebook, is if you change the language of your notebook to a different language, then the products will be generated in that language. So it's kind of neat to see that happen with the two podcast style voices, but it also creates the videos and the slide decks and things like that in another language for you automatically. So the next section we're going to talk about now is thinking about these notebooks as in a different way. A lot of times we're really focused on, our teacher or educator workflow. And the idea here is how can we translate that into using a notebook for a student-facing application. So the three key things are that you really have the purpose of the notebook in mind, what you're trying to get students to do with this notebook, then choose the sources based on that. And then this last section is what are you going to have kids do with it, right? And how to kind of scaffold that in those tasks with the notebook so that we don't have AI doing all the thinking and the kids just, doing all the not, copying out of the AI. So some of the things that make a strong classroom notebook are really understanding the learning goal that you have in mind for that notebook, and that directly affects the resources you're going to put in there. Creating some prompts that you're going to require kids to do, or some frameworks for them to interact with the notebook, and giving them suggestions on that. And then finally, having some products that you're going to have the students create based on those notebooks that make their thinking visible. So, what are you having the kids do that really requires them to interact with the information and process it so that you can see what they've thought, how they've thought, and what they produced from it. And that comes down to this idea of structured guardrails, of having, teaching and reinforcing, kind of being a little bit of a broken record with your norms and requirements behind using AI in your classroom. So the idea here is that we're thinking about what do we want the students to be doing with this notebook rather than what the AI is generating. So it can generate a summary of notes and flashcards and an infographic in a snap. If we just let that happen, then then the kids aren't going to be doing any of the work. So what is that interaction that you're going to have the kids do that gets them to practice and really think through what that information is? So if you are in the companion doc, you can see that there is a spot for this in the notes. And I'm going to open up that companion doc and just kind of slide down here and say, the first thing that you would do is really think about what this notebook is that you're designing is going to be helping the kids do. So that would be the first thing that you would think about. And then based on that, you start selecting your materials. And your materials might be, teaching materials, slide decks, handouts that you've created for them that you're uploading. They might be, links out to YouTube videos that relate to the topic. But in addition, consider adding your actual standards and your unpacking document. That'll inform the notebook of what all of those other sources are being uploaded to do. Another thing that you might consider doing is adding a source that describes your class and the way in the output of the notebook should be written. And I've given you an example here of one that I wrote. And what this source does is it tells the notebook to talk to ninth graders rather than, sort of framing the language in a more adult way. It will pull information from that source that tells it about your, if your school has a mascot and the name of it. It can, you can give a little bit of information in there about what your students' interests are, so that when it's giving examples, it kind of is informed by your actual context. You can tell it what not to do. If you're uploading the standards, then you can tell it, put any standard or learning goal in language that is appropriate for my classroom, and it'll know what you're talking about. So, and then I've prompted in here to always ask the students if they would like more examples or clarification, because you kind of want to balance being concise, because kids don't want to read a whole lot. But on the other hand, if they need more information, it can be prompted to say, and do you want another example? I told you about farming. Would you like one about sports? That sort of thing. So you could use this as an example of a way to add a source to kind of customize the output for your notebook. Okay, so we're going to curate some sources, and I'm going to open up, let's see, I think I've got my example over here on this screen. If I drag this over here, do you guys see it? Yeah. So this is an example 8th grade notebook, and what I have uploaded here are the standards and the unpacking support document from the state, and I've uploaded a copy of a slide deck that's all about fossils, and I've got my little output level here that tells the notebook how I want it to talk to my students. And so this is an example of a notebook I could share with students if I needed them to do work around this standard. And to do that, you can go up here and you can, within your district, you can add your students' names. You can assign it through Google Classroom if you have Classroom, and they will be able to interface with the sources that you've selected, and they'll be able to see their information in their chat, but they won't be able to see anybody else's. Okay. So if you just put your students in a notebook and give them the screen that says, okay, there's information here about fossils, go ahead and make flashcards, or, take a quiz and do some self-directed tutoring, that could be successful. But another idea is to actually give kids a little bit of guidance and draft some prompts that you would require kids to use with the information that you've put up in your notebook. So it can be all about comparing different perspectives. It can, if you had 2 different slide decks up there, 2 different documents, you can ask them questions where they have to use the resources in the notebook to support their claim and give evidence. You can give them prompts related to helping them clarify and synthesize any of the information in there. But on this part right here, this is where the design really comes in. Once you've got the sources in your notebook, you're going to be giving them some kind of guidance of what to do with that information that gets them to really think about it. So, and then at the end, you could have them generate any of those products that are enabled in your district that the kids have available. But then, the big question is, what do they do with that information? Are they using it to make a presentation? Are they having a partner and they're doing a turn and talk where they're teaching each other? But beyond just generating that document that NotebookLM is going to be really great at generating, it's the what's next. What am I going to have kids do with that actually gets them to explain it, to process it, and that involves a lot of cooperative learning in your classroom, or maybe whole group teaching, things like that. So the product is just another way to see the information, but the learning comes in with what do they do with it. Okay, so if you are on this slide, and it's also in the companion document, there's a link there to what I'm going to call traditional uses of NotebookLM.
Well, Stacey, we do have one question. Since I have chat closed, can we, let me see if I can unmute
Let's see. Yeah.
Bazemore family. I can't unmute without unmuting everybody. And I think we have no more Zoom bombers among us. I will change the setting real quick, because can you drop something in the chat, Bazemore family? Are you able to chat? Okay, if you want to just put it in the chat, we'll answer it that way.
That would be good.
Okay.
Appreciate you guys working with us.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to quickly switch it where you can turn your mic on. We may have to turn them back off, but if you want to just go ahead and speak up. Bazemore family, you should be able to okay, she's got it in the chat.
Okay.
Tool to create a notebook of lesson plans for a unit.
Definitely. So so if it's almost like you knew what slide I was going to be talking about. So I appreciate that. So if you look through this, this is a lot of traditional, like I said, I use traditional in a little bit of an ironic way, right? Because it hasn't been around that long. But yes, definitely. If you've got your lesson plan template and your standards and your pacing guide and all of that information, you can prompt this AI to create anything you want. So you could do lesson plans, it could do mini lessons, it could all of those regular sort of teacher tasks that we're going to want to do. And we actually, I think, are going to have a whole entire, either we have one or we're going to do one on, just, how we use this, for our role and for teaching. But the twist on this is, once you have all of that information curated and it's in your Google Drive and, you've got all of these resources, then why not make a version of your notebook that is designed to support the students in learning the information that you've made that lesson plan on, because it's very close to the same exact notebook, right? And then some of the really straightforward things that kids could do with it are, they jump into your notebook and it's got the standards. You tell them, prompt your notebook with this learning goal, so the notebook knows what you're focused on, and then do to study and review with that information. And it's their own personal tutor. But instead of using outside sources, it's using the information that you have taught them in class in some way, shape, or form. So you've selected that and the quality of the information that they're using. Same thing with these interactive tutoring sessions. Students can create little quizzes and do their own little self-assessments right there inside the notebook. They can create mind maps so they can see the connections between the concepts. Now, they're not going to make that up on their own, so you'd probably have to give them a prompt that says, ask your notebook this, in order to see the connections between the standards or between the information and it'll create a visualization for them. NotebookLM is known for increasing accessibility for students because it gives them control over their own learning experience. The language of the notebook can be changed, so it definitely has all of these things embedded. Differentiation with some assistance and some prompting, the kids can really customize it to their own experience. So, and the key things are that because you have uploaded the sources to the notebook, you know what information they're getting it based on, rather than just going to an external AI where you would be, where it would pull from all of its source information. Another sort of traditional use, I want to make sure that I pointed this out down here at the bottom, is this idea of grounding research. So if you're having kids do a research project or in your classroom, you can create a baseline notebook for them that says, here are the sources that are good for this topic. And then they can do research on their own and add additional resources to the notebook, depending on how it's used in your district. So again, it gives a kind of a high quality location for that information, and then processing it and turning it into the ultimate product that they're going to create. The next part of this that I want to talk about real quick is this idea of going from maybe the traditional tutoring sort of self-study, self-guided study aspects of a notebook and thinking about what could make this an even more rigorous experience for students. So you've got your basic design and you've delivered this notebook of this information to your students. Then how do you ensure that they're really doing the thinking and the AI is not? And the first block there says in I guess maroon, whatever color that is, says think your thoughts first. So each one of these, as you see in a second, is going to start off with some kind of analog or face-to-face experience where kids get their information out of their head in some way, shape, or form before they jump to the AI. And then the next step in that is going to be the transfer task. I saw a chat pop up, so my left eye is distracted, where you have them apply it in some way, shape, or form. Jennifer says, do you provide students with an accompanying doc with suggested prompts, or wait and see how they use the tool on their own first and then recommend prompts on an individual basis? The way I am designing or envisioning this is that it would be, you could do both, I think, is kind of wait and see, but I would give kids some suggested prompts that are designed specifically for the tasks that you have in mind. Now, if they're just creating notebooks on their own and doing whatever they're doing, that's one thing. But if you have a learning goal and you want to get the kids to go through, certain things in your, with the notebook as a tool, then it's good to provide them with some structured prompting support before you just sort of turn them loose to start interacting with their notebook. So under the think your thoughts first kind of framework here, one of the biggest things to do would be to do some kind of information retrieval step without using the notebook, and do that process in class, either individually or with partners or with a group. So you're getting the students get their information out of their heads first, then go to the AI to do something that you want them to do with it. So you've kind of figured out what that task is, and then after the AI provides information, then step 3 is how does the student evaluate the AI output, revise it, and interact with it. So kind of this think your thoughts first and retrieve the information out of your head, interact with your AI in a way that you as the teacher have decided meets your learning goals, and then have the students go back to that AI output and evaluate it and do something with it. So this next step in this little process also is this idea of transferring the information, going from what the AI has provided and what you have said as the teacher are the things that you want them to get out of the notebook, and then having the students interact with that content and apply it to a new situation. So that takes it to the next level of their processing ability, that they can take the information as is, and then they can transfer that their understanding and apply it to a new situation. So in order to kind of put that into, okay, I hear your words, but how do I do that? There's another Google Doc, and it's also in the companion guide. So it's under the category of rigor upgrade. And so if you click on that doc and open it up, you're going to see all of these tabs on the left-hand side. And so that first step is, how do we retrieve information and do something with it? And if you go through this whole sequence, then you will move kids from basic understanding and sort of short-term memory down to being able to apply it to a new situation, and then think about what they learned. And then if they have any revisions, then they can actually go back and revise it again. So it's that whole entire instructional sequence. So let me go over here to this companion doc and show you what you mean.
I'm not sure
So
if you
if
think we
you-
can see the companion doc, but I know I cannot. I can the whole time I've only been able to see the 8th grade science standard, the notebook LM.
Yeah, for the last, I was just getting ready to stop you. I think that you're stuck on a tab, not a screen.
I think you are right.
Yeah,
Fix that.
I was just wondering that until she spoke up.
I'm glad you said that, because I've been clicking away thinking you can understand what I'm looking at, which is
Yeah.
not great. And
I don't know. I think when I kicked you out and had to reshare, it got.
it might have been that, yeah. So there we go. Now it's switching, right?
Yes, now we can see it.
Okay. So if you're in this companion document and scroll down past all those little task cards, this was the link for the traditional uses in the classroom. And then this is the one we're talking about now, is this one that says rigor upgrades. And if you open that up, you're going to see that little instructional sequence on the first tab, and then click on the next one, which is retrieval and AI feedback. So this would be a great starting point, and it kind of gives you some structure for how you would introduce it with students.
Being stopped.
And so the first thing to do, especially if it's the first time kids have used NotebookLM, is to clarify what the purpose is for this notebook. Are they creating something that's going to be graded? For this retrieval task, it's really about strengthening their understanding of the topic. And if it's hard, it's supposed to be not too hard, but just right, kind of the Goldilocks principle. And then at the end, that just being really transparent with students about what you're having them do with the notebook, right? And that this is a tool that is helping them learn, not just generate a cool product and move on. So once you kind of establish some ground rules, the next step would be to have kids, this is the, put what you know out there on the screen, on a piece of paper, create a list, do a concept map, write on a whiteboard. It doesn't have to be anything a really big deal, right? But just get them to think about what it is, whatever they know already first, that is related to the task you're setting them. Once they do that, then they would go over to the notebook that you've shared with them, and they would jump in there and they would paste their explanation into the notebook. So the notebook knows what they just got done thinking. And there are a couple of ways kids could do that. They could open up a Google Doc and type it in, and then put that doc in the notebook. But another way to do it that is really kind of cool is they could go over to sources and open up the one that says copied text. So let me show you that again. Open up sources, go to copied text, and it opens up a little text box, and they can just type their thoughts in there. The important thing to know is that they are taking that bulletin list or that concept map that they've already created and thought about on their own, and then going to the notebook to upload that information to the notebook. And key thing is, it doesn't have to be correct. Nobody has looked at that piece of paper and said, and done any evaluation of it. it, right? It's just, this is what I think I know, and put that down. Get that information into the notebook and upload it, and then you would go back over to the next task, which would be to have the kids do some specific prompting. Have them prompt their notebook with compare my explanation with the source. So you've taught them about fossils. They've made a concept map about what they know about fossils. Theoretically, those two things would be the same, but maybe not, right? So you could have them to, just prompt their notebook to compare what they think to the notebook sources, and start interacting it from there. You could have them ask the notebook for ideas that are missing, misconceptions, things that need to be explained more clearly. And that starts that instructional sequence right there. And so every student who is in their notebook is going to get their own set of answers based on what they uploaded as their in that first step of thinking their thoughts first. Any questions about how that might go in real life? Okay, so, and if you go through this document over the Rigor Upgrades doc, you can see that each of the tabs over here on the left-hand side match one of the levels in that instructional sequence. So the next one would be is, what if you are at the point where kids have an understanding and you want them to defend their answers. So you might do a compare and contrast, but the upgrade with the notebook would be defend it, right? Go into the notebook and have them make a claim and add their claim to the notebook, and then interact with the notebook to find out what better explains it, to get 3 pieces of evidence from the notebook, anticipate a counter argument, and respond to it. So you've got a really directed way of having them interact with their notebook. If you go to the next one, the next tab over here on the left-hand side, it is a sort of a vocabulary-oriented task. But instead of just listing vocabulary, making flashcards, defining terms, they can take it to the next level with the notebook and do some making connections between those words. And so there's some information here about how you could take the kids through building that concept network based on the terms and the vocabulary words that you want them to know. It's tied directly to the sources that have been added to the notebook. So there are a bunch. It takes you all the way through this entire sequence. One of the ones that I love the best down here is this one under it's reflection mode. Super fast and easy. Something that we can do in an exit ticket really quickly. It should only take, once they're kind of familiar with using NotebookLM and you're not teaching the tool as much and you're just using it as an instructional resource, is jump into your notebook, ask these questions, and the notebook will interact with them for a couple of minutes to get them to think about what they understand and what they know. And because it's grounded in your sources, you know that it's going to be informing them based on the accurate content that you've given them. Okay, so I have a couple more seconds here to talk to you about this ending part. Before you jump into using NotebookLM with your students, you definitely want to pre-teach how you want your students to use AI, what your expectations are, and how they're going to use their learning along with the AI output. Some really good ways to start thinking about this. Of course, we love this graphic from Matt Miller in Ditch That textbook. So where does this fall on, sort of these types of activities? And, what's that balance between using AI and making sure kids are thinking? Another really good way to start teaching this with your students is to use some version of this student AI integration framework. So where are they? Is this an AI free activity? That's step one. That's that think your thoughts first part. And then as you're moving through the levels, what are you asking kids to do? So if we start teaching them this, then this kind of framework of where am I on this 0 to infinity chart, where am I with this project, with this task that you've set them. This is another version of that chart. So choose one of these, customize it for yourself, and teach students about your expectations for using AI before they jump right in. Another really good resource, I follow Dan Jones. He wrote a book on modern PBL, and his blog this is a blog post directly over to how he uses the podcasting feature with his students, but he's constantly just adding more and more ideas. So highly recommend checking that out. And if you're going to use the podcasts, he's got some great prompts for you in there that can give you some creative ways to use that audio overview with your students. I want to wrap it up real quick with just some resources. These are all in the companion doc, but we've got some source folders of some resources for designing notebooks that are for a very specific purpose, like MTSS and MLs and science notebooks and things like that. So that might give you some ideas. And I'm updating these Wakelets all the time too. So just a few more resources for you. But with all of that being said, you can make a copy of this presentation, but I am 100% out of time. But I'm happy to stick around and answer questions. And we'd appreciate you doing the feedback survey, because we're always taking your ideas and trying to implement new webinars based on what people are looking for. But I appreciate you just letting me talk to you about NotebookLM for the last hour. And if you've got questions, please either chat or unmute.
Okay, I did put the feedback form in the chat, and I did fix it so people can unmute.
Excellent.
So if anybody wants to do that. Apologize for having to mute everybody so quickly, especially you, Stacy.
That's okay. I figured something was going on one of those tabs that I couldn't see. So.
Somebody did put in a tip on audio summaries. Sometimes acronyms like ISTE can be mispronounced. This was great. Thank you. Yeah, I've noticed that too.
Yeah.
Sometimes even AI, it will mispronounce.
Yeah, always listen to it if you're creating a summary, and then you always have to check and make sure, is it just mispronouncing or is it saying something that's completely, I don't know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So does anybody have any other questions? Any tips for using NotebookLM that you want to share with those of us who are still here? Love to hear your ideas. Thank you, Felicia. Appreciate it. Okay, you guys. And I didn't get any requests for access with all of my links. So I'm going to count that as a win, because that means I shared everything right.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, everyone.
There you go. Eden, do you have any questions that we can answer for you?
Hi, good afternoon. I will just go on with the video that Miss Vera shared. because I came in late, and I'm sorry for that. But but I'm interested to view that this recorded presentation. Thank you so much, Mrs. Stacy.
You're
Thank-
welcome.
thank
Thank
you
you for
so
being here
much.
this afternoon. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, just us.
So
So
what
sorry, Stacy.
what happened, Vera? I didn't see anything. What was it?
Are we still
Yeah.
recording?
Yeah, let me stop the recording. Thank you, Jennifer. We've already got, this one's already gonna have to be heavily edited.
Let's play it.